Hello and welcome to The Big Picture. One of the most debated issues for a long time in this country is the state of education. Periodically, the media brings out the best and worst in the system, leading to some passionate discussions soon to be forgotten. The NDA government last year set up a committee headed by former Cabinet Secretary T.S.R. Subramanian to draft a new education policy. Incidentally, the last policy was framed in 1986, which was modified to some extent in 1992. The need for a new policy which can take the changes and progress in so many fields during all these years has been greatly felt. The Subramanian Committee has come out with a report of over 200 pages. However, after many weeks, the Ministry of HRD has released a draft of this policy in 42 pages with some modifications apparently to the committee's recommendations. We will discuss this draft released by the ministry and what are the highlights and hitches. To discuss this, I have with me T.S.R. Subramanian, former Cabinet Secretary who headed the committee, Prof. Apoorvanand of the Department of Hindi, University of Delhi, Ambaraish, National Convenor, Right to Education Forum, and Rahul Singh, Associate Professor at the Birla Institute of Management and Technology. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Subramanian, we are told that you had given some about a 200-page report. The Ministry of HRD, in its wisdom, has come out with a report, what it calls as a draft, inputs for the draft policy. About 42 pages. Are you satisfied with what has come out?
Yes. No, I have not yet read it. I have only glanced through it yesterday. I have not yet read it, so I am not able to comment on it. So I would not at this point of time be able to comment on. I can very clearly see that a number of points made in the report of the committee which I chaired is now figuring in the draft of the ministry. But I am not able to comment on the details to see what the coverage has been, what the approach, etc., is. I have not had a chance to read it carefully.
Okay, what are the, sir? You say in your report that the Indian education system is in a disarray. We are told that you have said in your report that Indian education system is in disarray. What are the, if you have to put a finger, on two or three things which have really gone wrong, what is it that your committee has said?
Well, I think you asked a fundamental question because to have a treatment or to make sure that the patient recovers, we have to know the extent of the problem and the extent of the illness which prevails. We have done a fairly detailed diagnosis. We found that across the board in school education sector, higher education sector, there are firstly lots of things have happened in the last 30 years. For example, college education from 2 lakh students we have moved to 3.5 crore students in the last 30 years. Again, from about 1.5 crore students in the school sector, we have now moved to about 33 crores near universal education in the school. From about 12% literacy in the 50s, we have now moved to 74 literacy all over. The gaps that we found are very fundamental. We found that overall the quality of education, both in the school sector and the higher education, is number one, very, very bad. And even worse, it has been deteriorating in the last 10 to 15 years. This is the important finding that we found. The other one was not so easily visible, but we found that children from the economically and socially backward classes, even though they have the same right under RTE and also under the other higher education laws for education, we found that I would not say there is any discrimination against them deliberately, but the system does not allow for their natural handicaps, financial and other social handicaps to, in other words, the very major investment that they make in terms of emotion, in terms of finances, in terms of aspirations, they're not being realized. So we found two very important ones. I'm not going to chapter and verse, that the really quality is bad. 25% of a class 8 student is not familiar with class 2 material. After 8 years of schooling, the basics of arithmetic operations are not familiar to 50% of students. Then in higher education, we found degree shops abounding. We found for every reasonably good institution in the higher education sector, there are 20 which are bad. So across the board, without going into too much detail, so essentially we found the system cannot sustain itself as it is, and this is the diagnosis. You asked, I'll just take one more minute.
Yes.
You said what are the broad directions, why this is happening, for us to know what kind of solutions are required. There are 3 or 4 types of. Firstly, the importance that we have to give to the teacher at all levels, so school and higher education, is not being given. That the entire administration is focused on the minister, the secretary, the director, the institutions, etc. It ought to focus on the institute, on the school, on the teacher, and on the. We have to invert, first of all, psychologically, the entire pyramid of invert the pyramid of approach to education. Number one. Okay. Number 2, we found rampant politicization, political interference at every aspect of school administration and higher education. Thirdly, there are huge problems of quality, as I said, and inclusivity. And lastly, we found a very interesting thing, that we found that the human material in India is outstandingly good. You go to the most remotest part of India, you find the child given reasonable health care, reasonable education, 3 to 4 years, it will develop into a world-class kind of a mind, as good as anywhere in the world. Therefore, our report is an indictment of the governance model in the education sector. Basically, in other words, we have said there's a crisis today. If this country has to fly, it has regained its place in the Committee of Nations. The education sector needs to be revived.
Okay.
This, in short, is the and for this we have given 90 recommendations.
Okay, sir. That's quite a thanks. Thanks for giving us such a in summary what you have done, Mr. Ambaraish Rai. Do you think that this MHRD, which has come out with this draft report, tackles the problems which Mr. Subramanian is talking about?
No, actually, Mr. Subramanian report, this is more than 200 pages, and he tried to cover all the features of the school education and problems of the higher education, and suggested made some recommendations. I think 90 recommendations he brought in his report. But this MHRD, which officially released some inputs for the draft new education policy, they have deleted so many recommendations done by Subramanian committee, number 1. Number 2, this in Subramanian committee report and in the MHRD draft, there is no much focus on Right to Education Act. You know, this Right to Education Act, after the 100 years of people's struggle, we brought a fundamental right constitutional amendment through the constitutional amendment, and we brought this Right to Education Act. They have least bother about the implementation of Right to Education Act, which is for the improvement in school education. You know, after 6 years of enactment of this Right to Education Act, only 10% schools are compliant with the RT. Everything is mentioned in the Right to Education. Infrastructure, a level of quality, teacher training and teacher regularization. So many solutions are incorporated in the Right to Education Act. If they focus on the Right to Education Act for the implementation of Right to Education, so many problems could have been resolved. But they are not focusing on Right to Education Act. In this MHRD report, only infrastructure issues are addressed.
Absolutely. Mr. Subramanian, now, would you like to react to that? That the RTE has, your committee report, Mr. Ambaraish says that your committee report also has not taken adequate note of the RTE Act.
No, I respect the views of Mr. Rai, but I think the first part is correct that we have covered the areas On RTE, look, it's an act. He's perfectly correct that at the center and the state, particularly in the state governments, implementation is an awful state, and the report says that. Basically, the why we are today is infrastructure in schools are not available. He is perfectly correct. Less than 10% of schools, both in the government sector and in the private sector, comply with RTE regulations. I agree with him. We have said repeatedly, RTE, it is an existing act, it should be implemented. What we have done is, in the RTE, we have said 2 points. Infrastructure is only one element. Finance is only one element. There is a huge element of quality that has to come in across the board, and we have talked about that. We have also said that there are a couple of changes, tweaks required. We have not endorsed. We think the dramatic change that we have in terms of enrollment, etc., is due to RTE. Nobody can do down RTE. All we have said is, number one, it must be strongly enforced. Number two, a couple of gaps there must be addressed.
Okay.
So I'm not quite sure I agree fully. I agree with the spirit of what Rai is saying. I don't agree with this analysis.
Okay. Apoorvanand, there are two aspects to this: the higher education, and the primary and middle school education. He's talking about the RTE, which deals with the primary education. But as far as the higher education is concerned, how do you look at this? As Mr. Subramanian points out, he's talking of some kind of a collapse of the education system. If he says that there's one college which is doing a good job, 20 are bad.
He's right. And I think, therefore, I'd say that the report that Subramanian committee has prepared is by and large good. The heart is in the right place. But I was disappointed when I started reading it by the fact that it lacks philosophical underpinning, and it shies away from asking crucial questions. Why higher education or education as such is suffering from the ailment it seems to suffer from now. For example, what is the crisis today? The crisis is increasing hatred in the society. And why doesn't our education system address that? That should have been asked in this report. And I don't see this question anywhere. Secondly, the question of quality. The report repeatedly mentions quality, but quality without talking about the context means nothing. There is a context. And the context is massification, as he said, Subramanian Saab said, and he is right there. Massification of schools and massification of universities and higher education. What does this massification mean? It is a dramatic transformation of the profile of the student body. In universities, there are first generation university goers now there, and our universities are not prepared to address them. If you go to classrooms, we don't have study material in Indian languages, and we say that our students are failing. So because we don't have resources, and that should have been noted in the report. One. And I think when I say that the report is right, because I would applaud the report for batting for 6%, at least 6% GDP. Secondly, for batting for public system of education, batting for strengthening of RTE, batting for public system of universities. The report says that we shouldn't go for we shouldn't open our doors to foreign universities in a rampant manner. It talks against commercialization of education, and I support the report there. But the problem is deeper and graver, and we should see, it talks about regulatory mechanism of the universities. But the main thing which Yashpal committee report had identified, and I was again disappointed to see that there's no mention of Yashpal committee report in this Subramanian report, that the primary and chief problem is lack of autonomy to universities. he talks about political interference. There is also commercial interference by market forces, and we should recognize that. Most of our professional education has now gone in the hands of market. It no longer lies with the public authorities. And there lies the problem. You go to Engineering College of Andhra Pradesh and South India and you see the problem. So I think when I read the report of the committee which Subramanian Sahab has chaired, I found that the committee has tried to identify the problems, but what are the philosophical underpinnings?
I think
I fail to see that.
That's an important point. I'm sure Mr. Subramanian will respond to that. Before that, let me, Rahul, how do you look at this report? You think that this report is in the right direction? And what the MHRD has come out with is in the right direction?
You're talking about the first report, which is by Mr. Subramanian,
and also now the MHRD report.
My first comment is that Mr. Subramanian has done a great job. My logics are there. My logics are following my statement. First reason is that, first of all, you're trying to do the need gap analysis. Probably for the first time again, we have done the need gap analysis. And I'm referring 1948 report by Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. I started analyzing these two reports and I found terminologies like quality, inclusiveness, education, innovation. These things are coming almost at the same number. So quality is mentioned by almost more than 250 times in both the reports. Inclusion is mentioned almost in both the reports. What is not mentioned in 1948 is probably innovative ways or innovation, which were not, of course, the need of economy or the society that time. The need gap analysis is perfect. What this report also mentioned is that you have to identify right regulatory mechanisms and make these regulations effective. If you have problems in the country today, either it is a school education system or a higher education system, it is not that you don't have a great policy makers or you don't have a good report. It is because execution is not happening. Center government relationship with the state government has to tie in such a manner that it goes and performs to delivery of education system. Numbers are coming in, but they have destroyed the quality. And now you compare compare yourself in the international community. Philip Altbach, which is a world-renowned educationist, says India is a world-class economy without world-class universities. Finland, South Africa, Singapore, they have surpassed mathematics and other calculative and other methods.
So do you think that the draft report which has been put out by the MHRD addresses these problems and will be able to address these problems in the manner in which it needs to be done?
Number one, this puts out in the report, yes, but two, whether it would be able to address these issues properly or not is subject to participation of a state government with the central government. Central government doesn't have its own private universities, which state governments have.
Central government has a lot of central universities.
No, private universities, I said.
Right. So, Mr. Subramanian, would you like to address some of the issues which Apoorvanand has raised?
I would like to thank the last speaker. Who was the last speaker?
The last speaker is Rahul Singh.
I would like to thank him for the comment that he has made. I think I need to say, Mr. Singh, that you have comprehended our approach perfectly and our hope in bringing out the report. Thank you very much. With regard to Mr. Apoorvanand's comments, I also broadly agree with him. Except this, there's a difference in approach that he produced and ours. Ours was not a social commentary. We do not want to go back to society and have a kind of a treatise on what society. We are now taking these as given. The kind of economic problems, the kind of social problems, the kind of gender issues, all other things in society. We are trying to see how to address them and not to change society, how to take into account what the current realities are. So in substance, I agree with whatever he is saying, but he probably has not read properly two issues he has commented on, possibly adversely. we have talked of a fantastic thing, that please grade the universities on merit. Those who fall in the highest category, give them 100% autonomy in every way. I mean, how much, give them also the responsibility, but give them total. He is talking of lack of autonomy. How much more autonomy can you give to them? Saying the only condition is that they must be in a fair manner to be assessed to at the top of the pile. If you come to that kind of a category, you should have that. And thirdly, my last comment is, we did not see it as a philosophical treatise. We are not talking of the history of education. We are not talking of the philosophy of education. We have strongly stressed the issues of values, which sort of permeate through the entire system. So I'm agreeing broadly with what he is saying. I only want him to see that in 200, we don't want to write a PhD thesis of 10,000 pages on Indian philosophy, Indian education, Indian society, and etc., and not write about. We wanted to focus on the 90 things which had to be done and have a base for that, which is what we have done.
Okay. Would you like to respond to that before I go down? Right.
No, I don't like to dispute what he's saying. I only want to say that when you are talking about regular, because what he is essentially trying to say is that it's an instrumentalist report, and I agree there that it's an instrumentalist report. But how do you change the governance system of universities? There should have been a clear roadmap. The roadmap that the Yashpal committee had recommended, that you merge all the different regulatory institutions like AICT, NCT, etc.
They don't talk of merging, but they have addressed this. They have addressed all these things.
They do talk about that, but there's no clear roadmap. And what is the problem that is afflicting professional institutions? We also need to talk about that. That is not philosophical. I'm not going there.
Okay.
Because he has ruled out that, and I take that.
Okay.
I take his point.
Yes, Rahul.
Yeah, so I think I will develop on his point. See, Commission is not supposed to give the 100% solution of the country. Commission has been given a task and is supposed to deal with the task. So it is important that we come up with the execution plan. But if Commission takes over everything, what is Ministry going to do? Ministry has to chalk out its own course of action. It is very much known that I was visiting 5 years back to AICT, and the first sentence I read on the board entry gate, don't pay any money to anyone here. That is not job of the Commission, that you remove the corruption in the regulatory bodies. These regulatory bodies and ministries have to take actions, and let this Commission objective be taken over by ministry and regulatory bodies.
I would like to, I agree with you. But what is the problem? The problem is that UGC, AICT, NCT, etc. have no longer remained autonomous bodies.
Yeah.
And we need to say that. That is what I am trying to say. That you say that
that's a point.
The regulatory mechanism is not autonomous of the government, neither at the center nor in the states.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Ambaraish, coming to the specifics, one of the things which has been, as far as the school education is concerned, this beyond 5th standard, you cannot, this compulsory passing of students beyond 5th standard, no detention policy.
Actually,
that has to be.
Actually, this no detention policy is linked with the continuous comprehensive evaluation.
Right.
And people are looking in separate way. No detention policy, fail or pass, and continuous comprehensive evaluation, already they are ignoring this. The no detention policy, there is no country is carrying this detention policy in their education system. We have removed no detention policy at the time of formation of the RT Act. No detention policy was removed with the concept that the self-esteem of a child should not be killed. So, child.
No, but has it worked?
It is not the failure.
Committee feels
it is not failure of the child. It is failure of the school and system. If you are not providing qualified, trained teachers, so child could not be developed his ability to learn. So, the teachers training institutes.
So you're trying to say that no detention policy should continue?
I don't agree.
You don't agree with
I
that?
don't agree with the Subramanian committee report recommendation, and which is carrying by the MHRD
Yes,
report
both
also.
of them. Okay,
Yes,
that's fine.
because this is
No, that's fine.
This is the scientific methodology to assist a child going through with the
No,
continuous
that's fine. There's
comprehensive
something
evaluation.
that obviously
It is not implemented. How can you say that
No,
this
fine, we are-
child are failing due to no detention policy?
Apoorvanand, the other more important thing which has been mentioned in this, in the MHRD as well as, is about the medium of instruction. What is the medium of instruction? The Subramanian committee report talks about the three language formula, if I'm not mistaken. If it's mother tongue or local language, and then English, he lays emphasis on English. That English is something which cannot be ignored.
See, I think here the report suffers from the same dilemma which all of us suffer from. How do you deal with this elephant which has entered your room, which is called English, and this obsession with English? The research worldwide shows that primary education, elementary education in mother tongue or home language is what is needed. This is the research.
They talk about primary education up to 5th standard in mother tongue, or they're not saying that English should be there, but at some level English has to be brought in. That's what the report says.
Why only English? Why not other languages? English is a reality, but when you talk in general terms, you should talk about other languages, and they do say that. They say that German and other languages also should be learned. The emphasis that they have given on Sanskrit is again amusing, and one can imagine why that emphasis is being given in a committee which has been constituted by the government. But the question of language is vexed, and I can see the trouble that the committee was having.
Let me get Mr. Subramanian. As far as the language policy is concerned, what was the committee's thinking on this?
I think our thinking is not different from what Mr. Apoorvanand has been articulating just now. We said that the base has to be the first 5 classes and even further, and we also said facilities should be there for use of mother tongue up to the highest level of education, number one. Yes. Number 2, there is a craving for English. The English is now aspirational in rural areas, in the poorest communities. We can't now
private schools have come up purely on the strength of teaching English at class 1. So therefore, we are now saying those students, the parents who want English.
Sir, Mr. Subramanian, I think there is a problem with the audio there. The weather seems to be creating a problem with that. Rahul, very quickly, we will leave that thing. One of the other things is about student unions. It's a very interesting thing. The committee apparently was not in favor of students' unions and a politicization of the campuses and things like that. But the MHRD report talks about encouraging students' unions.
So the commission report is not saying that a students' union should not be there. It is saying that politicization should not be there. You go and do fair things. It is in Oxford and Cambridge also. A students' union is in Harvard also. As long as you are keeping the academic issues within the university, there is no problem. But if you are doing too much of politicization at any level, whether it is teachers' association, students' association, regulatory bodies, or the connections, then there is a problem.
You have a problem. Okay. Apoorvanand, very quickly about that. Very quick last words.
Everything exists in history. The Indian universities have evolved in a manner which is very different from the universities of United States of America or Europe. So in Indian universities, right from the days of anti-colonial struggle, activism in campuses has always been political in nature. So you can't say that you can't have a political color. It will have political color. And that's why I say that things exist only in their history, and you can't dissociate universities from the society they exist and they spring from.
Okay. I think on that note we need to end. This is this is an issue which needs further discussion. I'm sure in the coming days and weeks there will be more discussion. We will also discuss more on these issues which have come out of this draft report which has been put out by the Ministry of Human Resource Development. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture same time on Monday. Meanwhile, have a great weekend.